This is a topic that hardcore, like type A women, professional women, women who are, in transition or kind of want that next step, but are so scared to dive into. Like you were that one person that I thought of that you're just doing it with all grace.
I don't know about all grace, but a lot of pizzazz. We'll use that word.
So can you take us through kind of like the former life that you had before and all of the things and why you chose to kind of take a step back?
Yeah, this has been a crazy journey. The past, I guess it's been almost 9 years. I started my first business when I was right out of college and I was 21 years old. And I started going to all of these big marketing conferences, and I was always the youngest person in the room and talking to a lot of older men and feeling like I needed to hold my own in those situations. I ended up running my social media agency for 3.5 years before transitioning into business coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing that up until now, about 5 years. And so I have been holding the identity for the past however many years of kind of boss babe, hyper independent entrepreneur. And I started to realize, especially about a year ago, how attached I was to that identity and how that really defined so much of how I saw myself and how I saw my value in the world. And I come from a family of entrepreneurs, actually.
Oh,
so
do you? Okay, so it was like in your blood.
Runs deep, is in my blood, yes. But what I realized is that I'd always known I wanted to be a mom. But as I started getting older, that reality started getting closer and closer. And I realized that so much of how I had set up my life was just not suitable for motherhood. It just wasn't going to work.
Like, what do you mean by that? When you say it wasn't set up for motherhood?
Working a lot, obsessed with my business. Like that was my number one priority.
How would you
since
say
I was 21?
Obsessed with your business?
I mean,
like, were you working like day in and day out?
I wasn't working day in and day out. I had pretty much never worked on weekends. I had a generally good work-life balance, but in terms of the mental space that my business took up, it was pretty much number one. And I actually had conflicts in my relationship because that was the case. Like my now husband, then partner, would often be number two.
Wow. Shout out to Jared.
And then
Jared, you're number one.
No, he is number one. Especially now I really tried to make him feel like much more a priority. And I feel like I really knew how to excel in this one area. And I got tons of validation for it, especially being a young woman in business who was doing really well financially and had, a public brand and things like that. I was just getting so much of that validation from what I was doing. And I just started having bit by bit a lot of realizations that, is this really the life I want to lead for the next 10 years? Because I loved what I did. I loved it so much, especially coaching.
It was kind of like your baby.
It was my baby.
Right.
And it was so fulfilling. It was so rewarding. And I still love it. I still love coaching. And it just felt like the seasons were shifting. The winds of change had arrived. And it was time for me to learn some new skills. And I realized, if I have kids at this point.
Because you're like planning for it.
Yes.
And this is basically starting to happen because you just got married.
Well, I started thinking this way and shifting perspective about a year ago. And I got married about 6 months ago. So I think that certainly influenced it. And I started having these realizations that I didn't know how to cook. Like, barely knew how to cook.
Wait, what do you mean?
Barely knew how to cook. Okay. Seriously. Like, I could kind of throw something really easy together.
Okay.
But in terms of like feeling competent and confident in the kitchen, not so much. And so it was things
does Jared cook?
Jared's an amazing cook. Okay. And I actually have always had boyfriends who are amazing cooks.
As you
So
were.
I just like never
thought about it.
And I was so like mission driven and passionate about what I was doing that we got to the point where we outsourced a lot of our household tasks as well, because we're both entrepreneurs. So, but I got this sense and this feeling of, I don't want to be a mom who doesn't know how to cook, who hates cleaning, who's not very organized or clean. And there was just something that started to shift within me of, I don't think this is who I want to be in the next 10 years. And these are hard skills that I need to learn in order to be the mom that I want to be, the wife that I want to be, the friend, the family member that I want to be. And it was definitely as one of my mentors says, humility soup. It was some humility soup that I had to eat.
Well, and this humility soup, I feel like for a lot of us, we're so busy that we don't even get the attunement or the personal reflection time to even think what we want or what we call in for the next 10 years. It almost sounded like you were future mapping in a different way for what your future wanted to look like. And it wasn't going to be in alignment with where you were already. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I was working with a business mentor at the time when some of this started coming up. And I had this vision and a meditation of me in this kind of like homesteading dress with my 4 kids frolicking in a field.
Because you want to have 4.
Yes.
You want to have a big family.
Yes.
Okay.
We want a lot of kids. That's why I need to know how to cook. So,
I mean, it's so good because a lot of times we don't think that we know how many children we want to have. And for you to be so intentional and so thoughtful in, I do want to have a big family. And I feel like Jared, your husband has also shared that he wants to have a big family.
Yeah. And that could change. We could have one and be like, no, that's enough. One is good.
But right now, you have this vision.
I have a vision. I want a squad.
I
want like a full squad.
Okay.
I want this crew where it's like the 4 of them are going to school or whatever they're doing, and they just like have this squad.
The squad. Okay.
And I just love this idea of this. Oh,
so you had a coach. You had a mentor.
I had a coach.
Basically piggybacking ideas off of.
Yes. And it was a lot to do at the time with business, how I was going to grow and scale my business to the next level.
Got it.
And then in a meditation, this vision came through and I was like, that feels energetically so much softer and more nurturing and open than I think I had allowed myself to be ever. And
because you had the vision of the 4 kids.
Yes, because that vision came through, it made me feel the contrast of like my current life. I wake up, I'm highly structured, I get to work, I'm on Zoom calls all the time, and I poured so much of myself and my energy into my clients. Those are my kids in some ways, in terms of the nurturing and the care that I put into those relationships. And I realized I have a lot of love to give. And I think there was this feminine essence within me that was just starving to really be seen and expressed. And the irony is that I felt like I was already doing that. And in a lot of ways, I think I am a naturally more feminine person in terms of kind of my free-spiritedness and
your adventure side.
My adventure side. And also like I love connecting with people deeply and having deep relationships and all of that. But there was this whole other level that just wasn't able to fully come online when so much of my time and energy was spent in the masculine. So that, I can speak more to the transition and kind of where I'm at now, but
right. So if that was the spark, which was a year ago, and then when did you say, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to shut my business down. I mean, a lot of us, even myself, going through having my first kid and going through, even the transitions that I had in career, nothing was as crazy as like transitioning into motherhood and like the identity piece of, whoa, I was known as, X, Y, and Z before, and now with my baby, it's like I didn't prepare for that transition. Where I feel like with you are taking that time to prepare for that transition mentally in the things that you're doing. And I just want to talk to that. If you can talk to us about the pre-prep before
Yes.
you're even calling in a child.
Well, it's so funny because I just laugh at myself sometimes. I'm like, you're such an overachiever.
You are.
Like, you're literally spending a year plus just preparing to get pregnant. And part of it is that's the way that I like to live my life. Like, I love the intentionality. I love the like gamification of it in some ways. But I think it was really helpful for me to have so many really good friends who have already become mothers and seeing firsthand, wow, this is a drastic identity shift, lifestyle shift.
So you were already paying attention
Yes,
to it.
I was tracking this with a lot of my good friends. And I realized that for me, especially as someone who is hyper independent, that is going to be a really tough pill to swallow.
Like, it can't just be the 1 month pin.
No. It's
like me.
I need some serious time to prepare for this. And, luckily I'm in a position where that's possible and that's accessible. And that's certainly not the case for everyone. But I realized that I wanted to take some time before even getting pregnant.
Wow.
To one, cultivate more of this feminine essence, and also two, to just have so much fun, knock everything off my bucket list. I'm going to travel in Ireland for 8 days completely by myself in the next couple weeks. I have been teaching myself to cook. I've been baking. I've been baking cakes and pies and all sorts of things.
From scratch or like
from
the box?
scratch, completely from scratch. Yes.
You're doing the scratch thing? Well, Martha Stewart, move over.
And Jared always laughs at me. He's like, why don't you just like take it like step 1, step 2, maybe like a plain chocolate cake. And I'm like 3-layer lemon raspberry with this like complicated icing. That's just how I like to roll.
See you next time at the Brave Table.